From advertising to software as a service to data.
Across all of our programs and clients, we've seen a 55 to 65% open rate.
Getting brands authentically integrated into content performs better than TV advertising.
Typical lifespan of an article is about 24 to 36 hours.
If we're reaching out to the right person with the right message and a clear call to action, then it's just a matter of timing.
Welcome to the MarTech Podcast, a Ben J. Schaap LLC production. In this podcast, you'll hear the stories of world-class marketers that use technology to drive business results and achieve career success. We'll unearth the real-world experiences of some of the brightest minds in the marketing and technology space so you can learn the tools, tips, and tricks they've learned along the way. Now here's the host of the MarTech Podcast, Benjamin Shapiro.
Welcome back to the MarTech Podcast. Today, we're going to continue our conversation about a startup founder who has somehow managed to bring three of the hottest topics in technology and marketing together: drones, media, and blockchains. Joining us is Stan Khlevner, who is the founder of Airzus, which is a compliant aerial media and services marketplace utilizing blockchain smart contracts. Outside of being the founder of Airzus, Stan is a commercial drone pilot and advocate for the fair use of aerial media. In our last episode, Stan told us about the ever-changing landscape of how drones are being used in media. If you missed that episode, I recommend you go back and give it a listen. And that said, today, Stan is going to talk to us about how he is combining both the use of drone-captured footage and blockchains to make drones safer for both pilots and content purchasers. Here's the second part of our interview with Stan Khlevner, the founder of Airzus. Stan, welcome back to the MarTech Podcast.
Thanks for bringing me back.
Great to have you here again. And just to recap what we talked about in our last episode, we talked about sort of what's happening in the drone industry in the sense of there's been some regulation that's making it relatively easy for people to become commercial pilots. There are some relatively complex rules in terms of where and when you can capture footage, but marketers and media production agencies are using aerial footage more and more. You mentioned roughly 50% of the Netflix shows that you surveyed had the use of aerial footage. So I want to talk to you today about how you're trying to make the capture and distribution of aerial footage safer for both the pilots and the content purchasers. So let's start off by you just giving us an overview of what is a blockchain, and let's just set some context for everyone listening.
Sure. Blockchains are basically distributed ledgers. They use cryptography to encode information and share it amongst what they call node partners, or the nodes of the blockchain, hence a chain. So most people associate blockchain with ICOs and Bitcoin. Blockchain is a much more sophisticated technology. There's lots of coins out there, and there's lots of architectures that you can build on top of your blockchain. At Airzus, we're basically taking a tokenless approach, which is based on what's something called the Hyperledger Fabric architecture, where we don't need a token and we're not doing an ICO. We're simply using the blockchain in the intended sense that this is something that's distributed and immutable amongst partners and even competitors in the industry, so we can have one frame of reference for the various media and compliance that we're putting all into this blockchain that we're building.
I'll be totally honest. I think I have an above average understanding of what a blockchain is and cryptography and sort of how Bitcoin works. And I still understand 50% of what everybody says about them. My understanding of what you're saying is that there is a way for you to essentially validate transactions. Is that a fair way to think about how you're using blockchain? There's a distributed way where multiple people can say whether something is authentic or not.
Right. So let me try to make it as kind of real world as possible. So we sell aerial media, and our competitors also sell aerial media. The transactions that are stored for this aerial media, everybody has on their own servers right now. So what we're building is a distributed blockchain where, if you think about it as literally a ledger document that everybody has, Here we have it for the entire industry amongst all the players, and we all have a copy of this on our what we call nodes. So everybody's able to see that this particular piece of media was purchased by this particular entity with an associated license. And the way we map it all together is the fact that we also imbue the contract with the compliance data for that media. So you're buying a piece of media that was captured in compliance, or if it was captured in Class B airspace and you have a waiver, you're able to actually show that and verify that. And everybody in the network can see that, as opposed to saying somebody is selling illegal stuff. That's where the benefit of the blockchain is for us.
Okay, so you're essentially creating a standard for everyone in the air media industry to be able to validate that a piece of footage that was shot, or a photo, a piece of video content was shot by a specific pilot with an active license and a waiver if necessary, so people can understand whether their content was actually shot in compliance with the FAA.
Right. And we're marrying that to a particular transaction, regardless of on whose system that transaction takes place. So if Shutterstock or any other stock video site that would participate in this, they can say that this particular piece of media has a particular license associated with it. And it was, not only is it captured compliantly, but it's also been purchased by someone according to a particular license. And that has implications for the future as well, where there's certain companies saying that the blockchain technology in the future will be able to verify that media, in almost like a digital rights management sense, is being used in accordance with the license that it was bought. That's kind of much more forward-thinking vision of this, but that's where this could be taken.
Okay. So let me just read that back a little bit to make sure that I and our audience understand. What I said was you have the ability to validate that a piece of media was captured with the appropriate licenses and waivers, but you're actually taking it a step further. And then when the purchaser of that content acquires the rights to whatever photo or video, they can actually validate that it was captured. So when I buy something, it comes with, here's all the rights management, here's all of the licenses and waivers that were associated with this piece of content that you have then purchased. So you're taking it beyond just, hey, the pilot did it right. But when I buy it, I could say, hey, I could prove that the content I purchased was captured in accordance with all of the regulations set by the FAA.
Exactly. And so we have a video, a business overview video in our About Us section, or it's on Vimeo and YouTube. But at around the 1 minute mark, it shows that what we're doing is marrying the licensee, the licensor of a particular piece of media, the data and metadata around the capture of that particular piece of media, and the compliance information, and storing that in the blockchain. And the benefit of doing so is the fact that we're not just a centralized authority. We're opening this up to our competition as well. We just want to basically promote the use of compliant aerials.
So talk to me about why you're doing that. You're basically creating this rich system that allows content creators and content purchasers to validate that everything is being done on the up and up. And then you're giving that away to your competition. Isn't that a sort of core differentiator for you? Why are you giving away what seems to be your secret sauce?
The real secret sauce is what we're calling our flight compliance engine. And that's the proprietary nature of what Airzus is building. That's how we can actually tell if a particular piece of media was captured in compliance or without compliance, and being able to attach certain waivers. So again, I talked about all the regulations around drones, but you can get a waiver for pretty much every single regulation from the FAA. So for example, even myself, who's a certified remote pilot, if I don't have a waiver for flying at night, then I can't fly at night. But if I get a waiver, now I can. So there's no way outside of the system for you as a purchaser of media to know that I have a waiver other than me actually sending it to you or verifying it in a contract or in an email, whatever. So we're building a system where you can actually verify that as a member. And I think there's value in that in the future when drones have transponders on them and a lot more information and data is being processed on the flight itself. we're building the system that says, this particular piece of media was captured in compliance. That's our proprietary nature. We want this blockchain to be private in that it requires membership. Just somebody can't just become a member, but we want it to be a kind of inter-industry blockchain where, again, it's in the interest of everybody that's selling this type of media to be able to say that, hey, we're basically selling media and licensing it that is compliant. And what we're doing is saying, if you want to associate the compliance and figure that out, that's the software that we're selling. The blockchain itself is something that we just want to build because it's in the best interest of everybody to be able to verify either on their own or using our technology.
Okay, so essentially the business case for you is if you build an industry standard for people to be able to distribute FAA compliant media, you're lowering the barrier for people to get access to this types of content, and your proprietary software is basically what hopefully people will use to be able to capture the media in accordance with all of the regulations.
Yeah, capture and verify it post-capture.
So tell me about what's going on with your business. Tell me about where you are and what are you trying to accomplish at this point?
Well, we're right now very early phase, bootstrap startup. My co-founder is the technical side, building out the actual blockchain itself. We have a few interesting meetings down the line of companies that want to help us formulate this blockchain in a way that makes sense for not only us, but for the competition. And at this point, we're just kind of doing drone jobs, posting up as much content as we can on Airzus and growing kind of organically at this point.
So an early stage startup, you're fundraising?
We are fundraising, but we've been speaking to investors, and it's very hard to get an understanding from someone that understands not only drones, but media and blockchain. So it's a little daunting for certain investors. Rightfully so. It is complicated work, but we're looking for the right investment partner that really kind of understands, is forward looking in this industry.
So in the blockchain drone space, early stage startup, fundraising, and trying to make it so commercial pilots and marketers alike can safely create and acquire digitally rights managed compliant aerial footage. Did I get all that right?
Yeah, that's the long way of saying it, but yeah.
Well, why didn't you just say that in the beginning?
Well, I think the explanation that you read initially was the best way to put it, but that's much more in depth.
Let's bring this back to the MarTech audience and our listeners. As before we let you go, what are some of the things that marketers need to understand about Airzus, drone footage, media compliance? What are some last parting words about your industry and your business you want us to know?
Basically, if you're a marketer and you need aerials, you should know that there are people that are certified to get those aerials. So if there is a photographer that you want to take a picture of a Pepsi can, you can't just use Pepsi's logo. They have the copyright to that. And there are rules around that. Same thing with model releases. And with drone media, there's kind of this new area where, yes, there's also compliance around aerials. So if you're not using a certified remote pilot when you're acquiring media for yourself, you should. And you should factor that into the media that you're buying. And ultimately, if people just walk away from this podcast and realize that there's basically a regulatory environment around aerials, then I've done my job, and that helps me down the line and helps the industry as well.
I think one of the most important things that marketers listening to this conversation should know is that some of the stock photography that is on the Airzus site is gorgeous. It's incredible. The landscape photos are wonderful. I've looked at them. I've used them. It's a great place to get affordable, distinct footage. They have photography. They have videos. And you can also request custom shoots. So for those marketers out there that are looking to get a different visual aesthetic for their website, if you're looking for anything that's a famous landmark, something that's nature or urban, you should think about drone media, aerial footage. And I personally, since Stan is my friend, I'm going to go on the record of saying you should go to airzus.com, AIRZUS.com. Check out some of their photos. And if you have questions, I'm sure Stan would be happy to answer them for you. Stan, any last parting words before I let you go?
Thanks so much for the plug, Ben. If anybody plans on buying aerial media and wants a heavy discount code, feel free to reach out to me directly. My email is sk@airzus.com. And if you're interested in flying drones at all or just want to learn more about it, happy to talk as well.
Okay. And that wraps up this episode of the Martech Podcast. Thanks to Stan for joining us. If you'd like to learn more about Stan, you can click on the link in our show notes to go to his bio, or you can go to his website, airzus.com, AIRZUS.com. If you're a subscriber to the Martech Podcast, thank you for being a member of our community. If you have questions, comments, or you'd like to be a guest on the show, feel free to reach out through the Contact Us link, or you can get a hold of us on social media. Our Twitter handle is Ben J. Shap LLC. You could also just look for Ben J. Shap on LinkedIn or Twitter. Those you'll find my personal accounts. If you haven't subscribed yet and you want a weekly stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, we've got some great episodes lined up in the next few weeks. So hit that subscribe button in your podcast app and we'll be back in your feed tomorrow. Okay, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.